welcome to the first ever episode of GamePod podcast, the Sandpit edition. To start with this podcast, I'd like to introduce my co-host and co-founder of GamePod, Farhan. Farhan, tell us a bit about yourself, your background.
Hey guys, I'm Farhan. I've got 10 years plus experience in performance marketing across several gaming studios, mostly across Europe. For example, Social Point, Cybo, Nanobit, and most recently at Carry First. I'm running my own game consultancy called Hyper HQ, and I'm also developing games independently, and now in the Middle East to start this new series with Ivan. Yeah. So Ivan, tell us a bit more about yourself as well.
Nice to meet you. I'm Ivan. I'm a founder and CEO of Superscale. Also in free-to-play gaming over 12 years at this point. I specialize in business analytics and optimization of games. So my whole life is try to understand what's the business potential of any given game and how to unlock it. And I've worked with studios of all sizes, from one-man indies like Nimblebit up to EA mobiles of the world. Definitely always looking for new ways how to grow gaming as an industry. And here we are in this region.
And Ivan, we're coming together to start GamePod, and we're in the Middle East. Why have we come together, in your point of view, to do this game podcast?
And I think it's a good story, because we knew that we wanted to do a podcast at some point, but we also knew that we wanted to do something different than anyone else is doing. And until we came to a certain theme, which we think it's unique and interesting enough, we decided to kind of keep it on a back burner. But right now, I think we find the perfect topic that is not really covered. I think game as a business is super exciting as on itself. And right now, if you're looking at a trend, if you're looking for a future of how the new world on post-IDFA and kind of a more mature mobile market, where is the growth coming? Where is the future interest, capital, and other parts will fuel the future of gaming? I think, especially this year, you've been in this region a bit longer than me, but this region, I've definitely got convinced that this is the right place to be to shape the future. So that's for me. And how about from your side?
So there's many podcasts out there in the industry, and I feel like we wanted to do something different. We're not here to break down games specifically and look at Monopoly Go and see how other people break it down and compare it to how other people do podcasts, but really talk about the business of gaming itself, how it's evolving, where it's going, what experience we have and what experience we can give to people who want to get into the industry, whether it's people starting out their career or people who want to invest in the industry itself. And we thought, why not come and film it in an event live? And we wanted to, neither of us have been to this event specifically, Pocket Gamer in Dubai. And we thought, why don't we film it during the event? This is us trying to understand more about the region and also trying to film our first podcast and doing it live rather than remotely. And I think it's an exciting podcast to start, and also exciting place to do it in, where there is a lot of investment from the government in gaming, but there's still a lot of unknowns in terms of connections that have yet to be formed, and hopefully we can be the ones that are bringing those connections together through this podcast and just being here as well. I feel that even when we were there today at Pocket Gamer, there was a lot of unknowns. We didn't know what's going on, others may not know, and even when we spoke to some of these programs, they didn't have a full kind of
fully formed offering
they
yet.
didn't have a fully formed offering. They had stuff saying that, in 2033 there'll be $1 billion in gaming, there'll be 30,000 people working in gaming within Dubai, but how we get there is still kind of very much unknown from them and from us. And I think that's what we want to explore, like trying to help that actually become true, and trying to work out who's going to be involved in this whole process. So that's what's exciting, I believe. and seeing who we can meet in these next couple of days. So why do you believe, Ivan, specifically, that the Middle East is the future of gaming? I think that's what we want to talk about, and what we want to talk to people about. Why is there? Firstly, why is this the future of gaming for the players, from a player perspective? Like what do you think is important here from a player perspective? Why do you think games need to be made for this region?
So that's a very interesting question, and this is also something which me as a newcomer to this region, you have a bit more experience. You have a family living here. You've visited. You've done business in Dubai yourself. I've started interacting with the region only this year, but essentially what was really interesting, that coming from kind of different angles, we came to the same conclusion at around the same time. And I think it's not really a coincidence. I think the region was able to really create quite a bit of buzz with anything from a very flashy announcement about from Sabi Games, establishing Sabi Games, which is literally the biggest fund for investing and acquiring gaming companies, over 30 billion, and many others that Saudi government started.
But before the government did it, why do you think do you have any understanding of what it is that is so important here, and why there is a kind of a big gap in the market, as in, we don't see games being made for this region and within the region, and now it's starting to come about. But why do you think? Do you think there's anything like there's a population here that has a certain level of income and amount of time to game, and there hasn't been a specific gaming market, gaming focus for these individuals to play at? They have to play with Western games or Asian games. They haven't had specifically games made towards them, and I feel like that's something that's being recognized by the authorities, by the government bodies, and there's being money put in to help there being games created that are kind of targeted for people within the region. I think that's important to touch on.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like a perfect storm of multiple trends, different trends that came to be, and I think ultimately it's also kind of connected with like differences between Western governments and governments in this region, also with the population demographics. If you can see, if you look at the Western world, the population is quite a bit older and getting older. The governments in countries and the representatives are also usually on the older side, which do not necessarily interact with or have any particular connection with gaming as an industry, even though it's obviously very successful and the biggest part of entertainment so far, but still very much under the radar, considering some exception, of course. And not really like a strategic focus. I think this is one of the differences that is kind of connected with demographic change. You see that a very young population in the region. Second of all, it's kind of an opening to the Western world.
You were saying population. You were recently in Saudi Arabia, and you were saying, what was it? 50% of people were under 20.
Yes. So basically, half of the population is super young. It's in there. I believe the percentage is under early 20s. Is more than half of the population. So it's super young population. Like pretty wealthy country. Obviously, that invests heavily into its education and trying to bring Western first of all, upgrading their local school system and have a different ways how to send the young people to study abroad. So even though that, for example, the country compared to Emirates, which started opening up quite a bit earlier and became like a international hub for many different industries. I think the behemoth in the region, obviously the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, started doing only recently, but started also with a bank. Like they went from like a country which was very hard to get into and was very conservative, into very much encouraging expats and Western businesses to come over. But what's super fascinating is specifically, not just in general, but specifically with entertainment segment and specifically with gaming, which I think it's super unique that you rarely see a country that on a government level put such heavy emphasis on this, and this comes with I think the demographic and strategic kind of a change that obviously the country gets pretty rich on thanks to their natural resources. But looking forward, 10, 20 years, it probably won't be as big as it is now. So how to diversify, how to build for the future, and obviously one of the most exciting global markets are gaming and mobile and entertainment. So I think this is one of the when these kind of trends met, younger population, like a government which is actually from the younger generation, opening up, trying to diversify the industries in the region to kind of form this perfect storm where actually the Western markets become a bit slower with the capital availability thanks to the recent interest rate hikes. The VC funding is in low in last couple of years. So getting funded in the West and especially in gaming, it's became more difficult. While this region at the same time kind of started opening up, starting investing heavily in acquiring studies and attracting and trying to figure out how to attract and build up the local development. So I think there's these many trends that were underway for some years, and actually kind of I guess starting last year, and I think this year will be one of the big years for gaming and for the next phase after the heights of COVID and Western gaming dominance.
Yeah, and from your experience, you yourself come from Slovakia, where there's a thriving gaming kind of a population out there in terms of game development in Slovakia and around in Eastern Europe, and seeing it yourself how game development has risen from many countries in Europe. What kind of advice could you give to the authorities and game developers here in order to develop that talent also through schooling? Like what would be required in order to develop talent locally and then build a whole development studio and publishing studio going forward?
So I think it's a obviously long process because gaming, it's a super exciting, more than $100 billion industry just on mobile. If you count all the parts that you could be considered gaming, it's probably closer to 200 billion at this moment. However, there's a lot of moving pieces, and you need to really have a full ecosystem right now to pull off something like that. I think that the regions I'm from Central Europe, originally from Slovakia, but I've lived in Sweden, in Finland, in London. We've done business all over the world, and you could see that that's something that even in Central Europe, which has its strength from the technical talent and being pretty still cost efficient to build stuff, like historically. There were multiple successful studios and publishers that came from this region. However, they still kind of again, maybe some outliers lag behind the Western publishers, developers, especially based in the US and Nordics, that ultimately also get bought by these big companies. If in Europe certain publisher becomes sufficiently big, he gets bought by a bigger, especially US based. But now we see also Asian based publishers, like you could see the exit of Supercell, of Rovio, to Japanese and Chinese developers. It's happening. So I think, and the reason is why there isn't that many, like why there's not really more Zyngas based out of Europe is this, that actually at certain point even the successful ones just get gobbled up by these bigger studios. And I think this may be an advantage of this region, because right now, if you could see like the capital, because access to capital is so much easier on the publicly traded, especially US markets or Asian markets, to get billions or even tens of billions to gobble something up. This is apparently which this region doesn't have a problem. You could see the first transaction or first big announced transaction from Sabi Group was Scopely, which is one of the top US publishers, get fully acquired here just from the get-go, not even raising on a public funds, just basically part of the initial group. So I think the capital availability is obviously a big plus now. However, you need so much more than just acquire studios and manage it as a holding company. You need to develop a talent. And again, FCC in Central Eastern Europe, you can get technical talent, but you don't necessarily may have enough talent to build the IP and market the game properly, right? Again, we have some outliers. especially on PC console space. Witcher series or some AA successes like Kingdom Come and whatnot. However, it's rarer in mobile. Maybe because Central Southern Europe, you could see Talking Tom as an outlier, but you don't see that level of success around. So for that, because you need much more diverse talent, and I think this will still quite a bit of work to do. Diverse talent, diverse set of partners to pull it off. So definitely to build out the whole ecosystem, it's a long-term process, but I think if you see really the strategic vision, which I think it's super important that you don't just allocate a bunch of money to be spent randomly, but you have a KPIs and OKRs for the next decade to get into, it can happen. But yeah, there's so much more than just money to be successful.
And you talked about Savvy recently acquiring Scopely, and the European publishers aren't often able to do that. You've got some companies that are able to, but it's hard to compete with the likes of Zynga until Savvy came along, backed by the Crown Prince with a public investment fund, now acquiring Scopely, and they have a larger amount of funds as well. So would you expect them to acquire more studios, like for example in Europe? Europe is a kind of a typical kind of stomping ground for the Americans to come in and acquire. Do you think you would see more acquisitions potentially from the Middle East, both from Saudi Arabia and the UAE in Europe? Or do you think there's more focus now potentially in creating something on the ground here going forward? Because it's hard to say, in my opinion.
So I think it needs to be a combination. You can see that also the different routes how the local region, which I also find very kind of a smart and fascinating, try to build. How do you build up a ecosystem from scratch? So yes, you have local consumers that really do play and do like games, and as you pointed out, there's still a lot of not that much focus as it could be to localizing titles. And getting the most out of it, even though it's available globally. But still, you have funds. But how do you build out the whole ecosystem that across technical, product, running game as a service? It's one of the actually most complicated stuff that you can do on both the publishing part, development part. You're betting a lot of money for unknown results. Years to come, you need to invest heavily both into product, into marketing, and you're betting that once you develop it, it will be sustainable for long term. You need IPs. To work with or create ones, which is either established ones that you can adapt or build up local ones. So I think there's a lot of pieces of puzzle that all together they need to come to a kind of a perfect picture, which will take some time. But how do you shortcut it? Well, you build, you buy something that works. Which again is one way how to do it, but obviously it's not like you're going to relocate all the talent, into this region. So, but you still want some level of know-how transfer and create this environment that helps with it. So also attracting other global developers to set up studios here to build up and train talent that later would maybe become founders of studios, get them proper investment, get them proper coaching. So if you see what especially when I was visiting Riyadh, what was big focus is the accelerator, non-equity accelerator, specifically for gaming at every stage, from concept stage to pre-seed, seed, Series A, up to actually IPO stage companies, right? So basically how to build out the all stages, which I think like West and obviously Asia, which we don't forget it's even bigger market than the West world, has already established and built in last decades. The GZ region is still catching up, but I think the sentiment of the market has there now is the opportunity to actually attract people, and we see that they are successfully able to do so, which will bring the long-term prospects.
Do you think? Obviously, we see Western games, Asian games being played in the region, but still, as we talked about, games not necessarily being localized, or there's still, the development for the region is still starting out. But do you think that we will soon to see like global games coming from the region that people play in the US, in Asia, in Europe, that are developed out here in the UAE or in Saudi Arabia. Do you think that will happen in the next year or two, or do you think potentially that something is a kind of a longer funnel away?
So I think this is a very good question, and obviously there's quite a few answers. I think ultimately also we live in an age that even the staunchly, let's say, office oriented or office first companies are accepting certain level of outsourcing, remote work, hybrid work, you name it. That's the game. I think to define a game made somewhere, it's a bit tricky because even a studio which claims that we're fully in the offices in whatever Finland, UK and whatnot. Obviously, if you count into all their partners that they rely on to whether build certain parts of content or provide some specialized service, whether it's from anything from game production, analytics, growth, technology stack that they need to happen. It's all around the world. It's still a global. So games are global business made by global ecosystem, right? And I think the question is like, where do you draw the line? I think that's an interesting one because just acquiring a company somewhere and just being an owner doesn't necessarily make you a game made in the particular country, which just a company from the particular country owns it.
Scopely is not a Saudi Arabian company.
Exactly.
It's owned by a Saudi Arabian entity.
The same as Supercell when they were bought by SoftBank, they didn't become like Japanese company or bought by Tencent, didn't become the Chinese.
Yeah.
So, however, there obviously are certain levels of hey, where the original idea for the product or for the publishing card is coming from. So if you look, for example, what Sense of Games is trying to do, they're setting up both like third party and first party publishing. So they're setting up studios, and again across the world, locally, but also in other regions in Europe where there's a development for them internally. They're publishing third party games that they're funding, but providing publishing resources internally. So I think that's a kind of a, let's say, hybrid model, which I think it's much closer to say like, hey, this is mostly Saudi game people that are based in Saudi Arabia are key in kind of a financing, developing, giving a vision and publishing these titles going forward. So I think this is probably the more probable way than just to see like literally everything bootstrapped from the local talent from the get-go and getting out to the top grossing titles, which by the way is one of the goals of the 2030 vision. Yeah. So there are a couple of steps before it, but I think we're seeing already some initial successes on this.
And I think these companies, when they establish studios, for example, Sunsoft in Barcelona, they will establish a studio there. They will obviously employ local talent, and maybe they can create hit successes. But that's still a distance from creating success from the local talent in the region. And I think that will take a number of years in order to build that, because they need to get talent to give experience. And then that experience needs to then go on and create something. So in the industry, you don't meet many people who are experienced within this industry that come from this region. And I think that needs to change. And we need to be like, we need to help that in order for this region to thrive. Like there needs to be, we know many people from Europe who are within the industry for a long time, but we haven't yet met them within this region. And that's kind of needs to be built from the ground up. So whether that's kind of degrees tailored towards gaming or kind of just people going into gaming straight from university, that kind of needs to be established, I think. And then that will really help the region thrive in terms of making gaming for its space. Because if people are really into gaming in this part of the world, they need to be building games as well. There needs to be indie developers. What we really want to see is like indie developers coming from this region. I think the government also wants to see that and invest in that, but it's also like a communication thing. How is that? How did the people know when they're studying that, hey, I can actually make games for a living? Like for example, what we were given that opportunity somewhat, like that we could make games and try to raise money. Here the opportunity is even bigger than what we grew up with, because of the fact that there's, if you're local from here, you can get a significant amount of money and backing and connections in order to, help you build a thriving independent games developer. So I think it's just really exposing that talent. I think that's what needs to be done over the next few years, in order to see, hey, look at all these local Emirati and Saudi games companies that have been formed from the talent in the region. I think that will come with time, but it's interesting to see how that kind of builds pace over the next few years.
No, absolutely, and big part is how open the countries need to become and are really trying hard to become to do business to attract foreign talent, because obviously that's the only way how you can effectively do the know-how transfer. Literally have people, experienced people that you attract come here to actually live, to interact, to understand the local environment, and work closely also to kind of erase like some bottlenecks or some problems that were preventing for this to happen. Anything from cultural to tax, bureaucracy, access to capital. But also, when talking building out the ecosystem, as I said, you need to have all the parts kind of working, run by experienced people and working in unison, and it will take time. So I think this hybrid approach that they try to invest into foreign companies, try to attract talent, to build something up, rely on a wide variety of partners around the world, try to also localize, help games that have a potential to perform well here, to have a localized version, and also maybe this could be their earlier step to expose this region for other companies that eventually can set up their subsidies and get something going on over here, and create a next generation of talent. So that all needs to happen. But from what I've seen, like how it went from zero to to one of the biggest buzzwords you can hear now, and with still very little info available. I think everything is lined up for this to make happen, but obviously still the beginning of the journey.
And what would you say to people who are listening who would want to know more about the region, get involved in the region, and potentially foster this new talent that's coming through? How would you tell them to kind of get involved with what's going on from what you've seen in the Middle East?
Yeah, so again, like it's a very new thing for me. I've also took it step by step. We're really lucky that our investors, when we're raising our last round, super scale last year, apart from basically Europe, like traditional European and US based VC funds and angels, we got introduced to Cyprus, or capital based on Cyprus, which was also something new for me. And Cyprus is already, if you look at it, very interesting place where it's still in the EU, but it's kind of on the crossroads, both cultural and business, between Europe and MENA and GCC region. And I was
another tax haven as well.
Yeah, definitely you have also one of the hallmarks is government, who really wants to support in a similar way the tech companies and gaming companies to come there and create this kind of a local. I saw
talent. Recently, actually, there was an advert from Cyprus showing why you should set up your company in Cyprus instead of the UAE. It was comparing themselves in terms of the tax regulation and setting up companies. So there is like some kind of rivalry as well between
absolutely.
The regions.
But also it kind of makes aware of makes the whole I think theme aware that, hey, there are these new exciting places that the government are actually very much involved in listening and helping developers, whether it's in a tech and gaming, to get their business started up and remove all the problem, or try to alleviate the problems that they face for the global businesses. But also, like, that was kind of a first step that happened last year. I started interacting more with the community with us in Cyprus. There's quite a few VCs, so I was privy to this meeting from VCs that are active in the region, from Egypt, successful entrepreneurs from both like Egypt, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and others. So there was this kind of roundtable that both the local VCs and people who moved there and started even before, so to speak, before it was cool,
Yeah.
trying to do business with the region. And they also told like pretty amazing stories, like how it's almost impossible to get a visa just a couple of years ago, even to visit, for example, Saudi Arabia, and now you can do it online with the no fuss. You can set up a company there without with very little help. You get a lot of support if you know where to look. So there's a light speed progress which the region tries to compete. So this how I was made aware that hey, actually there's interesting stuff. On top of that, we've seen the big announcement from Savvy Games Group and Scopely and a bunch of other sense of starting making waves. So then the event started happening, right? So I got invited to speak at the White Nights conference in Abu Dhabi. Then I went to the Reflect in Riyadh. Then I went here, and in the meantime interacted with people more familiar with the region. So that I found also very fascinating. That for me it was kind of a gateway. Was actually interacting with the Cyprus community and people who try to do business in Europe through Cyprus, and then getting into the region now. So and what I also kind of realized that there's zero information right now available if you want to do really gaming business. Like you see buzzwords and that's it. So learning it from scratch, you need to get lucky to intro to some people that they can give you some insights, like we discussed with people who are setting up Ubisoft offices in Abu Dhabi, and we're doing it for over a decade right now, which is fascinating. They have, I think, close to 50 people there, and all the quirks they need to go through, and how is it different and easier right now, and still find a lot of value out of that experience, up to how to do it now.
With Ubisoft, Ubisoft entered, as you said, a decade ago into Abu Dhabi, so they entered the region, coming to the UAE. Do you expect more Western or Eastern developers to come into the region now that we see that there's all this extra investment and they're trying to grow talent? Do you think that more of that will happen? Because I think Ubisoft was a good example, but we haven't seen lots of developers follow as of yet.
Yeah, so that's so I think again you have these outliers that pave the path, but already proven. I think that there's a possibility to not just have some form of shell company here, but actually run a production and create successful games with the local. But also, what I think this region is very interesting about attracting the talent from Asia or India and Pakistan and this kind of a region, which makes it really easy to actually get a top pick on the tech talent.
Yeah.
Make them over here and work on your product, which again you've seen like very very innovative stories how the people are able to understand the strengths and the kind of the weaknesses of the region and basically make kind of a unique business out of it and leverage it into it. So I think there's many stories like that I personally, even though I consider myself with over a decade really looking into a business of games, like kind of informed, but literally I didn't do anything before I started literally talking to people. So that is what I find exciting about right now. To really we'd like to bring not only our impression, how to make connections, how to make relationship, how to get some information from the region and from all the stakeholders that we can find here, local developers, Western developers. They came over here and set up something, or trying to set up something, or looking for something to kind of put it together and share it, with a community and with a wider industry that anyone can find what would be, if it's a good fit for what you're trying to achieve, and how to maybe connect this region with the rest of the world on the different levels. And that would be my question for you, Farhan. Like I kind of came through it through fundraising angles, and then kind of a general buzz and mystique around some of the announcements. There's very little info to go through. So how did you actually came? And obviously you've been a bit longer in the region. So what was your story? How did you get connected with?
So my story is I've been coming to the region since 1996. I find Dubai is now becoming the gateway to the rest of the world. Emirates is now one of the main airline operators, and Dubai has now become like one of the main destinations for people flying through the world, and I think it's taken over. So my brother's been a lawyer in the region for over 15 years, so I've been coming to visit him, and I've been around the region and seen kind of what it's offering. And one of the things I did recently was I established a business here. So my company HyperHQ is listed in a Dubai Free Trade Zone, and I have the kind of Emirates ID, and this kind of allows me to have a business entity here and also get to know more about the region. It's part of the way I live. Why I live kind of between countries, because I have my business residency here. So I come back and forth into Dubai. And what I found interesting is just seeing, the kind of more expos coming up. Like, for example, the reason why we're here is because I mentioned let's go to Pocket Gamer Dubai. This is the second year running that's happening here. You mentioned as well to me Abu Dhabi White Nights. I didn't even know about that. And of course, what's going on in Saudi Arabia. So originally, I knew about the project of the Public Investment Fund from Mohammed bin Salman a couple of years ago, and I heard he was investing in gaming cafes throughout the whole of Saudi Arabia. I think that's what happened. Originally, they wanted to have people gaming in cafes, very like 2000 style in Europe. You don't hear much about that now, but that's what there was talk about that a couple of years ago, and that's when I heard about them putting together funds to do development and mostly and publishing, which is kind of what formed Savvy back then. And so there was a lot of talk of it, but there was no real acquisitions. There was kind of money being poured in. We knew that they could put money in, and in the last year or so, you've seen this obviously huge acquisition of Scopely for $5 billion, I think it was, and then them announcing, I think that was only like they still have 3/4 of their fund left. So since then, for a while, I've been interested in working in the region, understanding gaming for the region, and just kind of being frank, being part of that. Because if there's that much investment, why would you work in a region that don't want to invest in gaming? You want to work in the region that is the future, and this is why I believe the Middle East is the future of gaming, because these guys are really want to own the space, and they're doing, I think, more so than any other government putting money into the region. You still see a lot of money and gaming subsidies being applied to companies in different countries, which is great to see. But really, the emphasis in what we've seen today as well in the UAE from some of these future gaming programs, and also, of course, what Saudi Arabia is doing through the PIF, Mohammed bin Salman's fund. It's crazy to see, and it's exciting to be part of the region. And I just kind of want to be. People are very, as you said, kind of very much disconnected and not understanding what the capabilities are. And I think there is a big gap between what the West know and how the kind of business is going on out here, and just being able to connect all these things together. That's kind of what I see myself doing in the next few years, based on my background of knowing the games industry. Just putting all that together. That's why I kind of find exciting about being here. And I think we could do a lot of those things by doing this podcast alone, just giving people a voice to speak, starting with ourselves right now, but then establishing that somewhat further.
No, absolutely, and I find it fascinating that obviously you've been kind of traveling to this region and connected for quite some time, and you've been kind of a trailblazer, working all around Europe, from UK to Spain to Croatia, Denmark, then in game growth and publishing, setting up basically its own publishing and growth part in South Africa for up and coming publisher and so forth, and ultimately, basically, you're saying that even though you've been traveling to the region, you have family here, you've a trade license here, what kind of connected your gaming basically interest and actually looking into this region while you've been around was also the announcement with Sabi, Scopely, and a bunch of other stuff, right? This is what I found interesting, that apparently it kind of worked if they wanted to if they wanted to get it done. And also I think it created also an avalanche of other stuff. As you said, it's kind of a rivalry in a good sense, I think, in the region between countries that have a similar goals to strategically diversify their incomes into taking gaming. You can see like Emirates started piggybacking on the bandwagon, even though they have kind of a head start and still have a head start in many cases. As you say, the Cyprus became quite a bit of a hub for gaming from developers on the Europe side, and obviously in the region you can Israel, which is obviously by far the most advanced. and as we were discussing, like what's the kind of issue with Europe is that if you build it to a certain success, you'll get acquired either by the US company or Asian publisher or Israeli big company like Playtika and whatnot. So Israelis were like the 800-pound gorilla in the gaming in the region for a long time. But right now, obviously the wider region is try to compete, and I think it's for the win of gamers and developers and everyone involved.
Yeah. And by the way, this rivalry that you talk about, I think it's pretty big, and it's what's going to set fuel to the fire. Because what we've seen in as you know, like the UAE has been trying to attract gaming for a while, and there's been companies that have set up here. But even seeing today, like there's a big, people don't really know what's being offered, and there's still like a massive like kind of lack of gaming infrastructure in the UAE. And then Saudi Arabia came in the last couple of years, pretty much out of nowhere. And they've thrown a lot of money and then acquired Scopely, and that's caused a lot of noise. And that's why we see today that there's funds being thrown in from the UAE. There's like, setting up your game company here through one of their free zones, and then also the program of like, hey, how do we like invest? This program at the moment, by the way, isn't there to raise funds. It's to be like, hey, how do we connect the gaming community and talking about, the future is here. But I still see that the UAE is kind of lacking compared to Saudi Arabia in terms of they're not throwing in as much funds yet. Do you agree?
No, but I think we need to really distinguish just availability of capital. It's important, but you can look at how some European countries were, I think, pretty progressive with trying to support gaming and tech industry. You can see Finland with their Business Finland initiatives. You can see German game funds that was in one way or another trying to help gaming startups to raise some additional funds to develop. But these are basically these are just that. Okay, we've allocated a bunch of money that can help a bunch of companies to grow faster. Obviously, there were some notable successes, like obviously we know that Supercell benefited from the Business Finland quite a bit, and came, and also thanks to them became a success. That it was like that, but it wasn't truly. We haven't really seen a strategic vision besides, okay, we'll allocate a bunch of money for this segment, and that by itself, it's also an outlier in Europe. Most of the countries still do not really recognize gaming as a as an industry of its own, or something that is super exciting for the long term, high paying source of high paying jobs and value creation. I think similarly in UAE, I think the gaming was still part of I think like a larger effort that, hey, if you the country, we're going to set it up so it's easier to do business in one way or another, but not specifically addressing the problems and the needs of the talents. There were a lot of blockers when you discuss like how hard it was to basically employ people over here, because you had to have like a local, even setup company was pretty hard. You had a certain quota and certain minimal wage requirements. And how many people local you need to employ under which conditions that were really kind of kind of a hard to hard to meet for many newer companies or foreign companies that want to do. But you could see that I think what Saudi came, it's not just the bag of money and some flashy, let's say, acquisition that caught everyone's attention, even though nobody was really, I think, aware really what's going on. But also that came with a strategy and with well-defined KPIs and OKRs, and also which I think it's pretty much visible that the current, not just the government but across all the levels, you have young people who are gamers themselves who not only see it as a kind of a business opportunity, but also as a consumers they understand like this is the future of how you consume entertainment, so they want to be part of it. So I think this was also a big part that even all the drawbacks that Saudi Arabia had compared with attracting foreign talent and so on compared to UAE and so on. I think they're kind of they come with a clear plan, which and this is some of the topics I think we deserves multiple sessions to deep dive into it, but you can see how specific, for example, the Saudi vision document is regarding gaming. Like it's literally written somebody who is well versed in how the mobile gaming and free-to-play gaming works, how AAA gaming works. You have very specific APIs, like how many games developed, how high in top grossing chart they should be, how
so Saudis came in late, but they came with a plan and a lot of money, and now you see all the if you look at jobs in the industry, the ones that are the highest paid or whatever, you'll see Savvy, one of Savvy's studios, or maybe even Sandsoft, to go to Saudi Arabia, to live in Riyadh. That's where they're saying, look, you need to come here on site. That's where we will, good opportunities in the market. They're currently sitting in there. While you see in the UAE, there's been gaming here for a while, but as you said, like no clear plan up till now. So it's been hard to establish businesses and attract talent from what we've seen, right?
But also I find it really nice and interesting. Like from my first event in Abu Dhabi, I was there. Like there was literally multiple, basically government representatives who were going around the conference that they sponsored, and were literally just asking like, "Hey guys, we'd like to make this better for game developers. We also want to make this as our strategic focus. Can you tell us, can you tell us what you need and what needs to change or what needs to happen?" So I also find it very, I say, unusual. I haven't necessarily heard about this in Europe or generally in Western market on this level to interact with the game industry as a community, which I think by itself it's a good signal. And not just a signal, you can see some changes that are being implemented as well to make it easier to set up company, make it easier to hire people, to remove a lot of the basically bottlenecks that represent.
We heard today about 10-year gaming visa for new companies, which we're trying to find more details, but I think it was announced yesterday by this future of gaming program.
So you can see that all the time. The countries in the region try to kind of address some of the issues, try to promote them as leaders in this rivalry, and I think this is also very healthy because ultimately, you have plus and minuses with each of the countries, right? So it's hard to really compare, what Israel can offer based on their already established major ecosystem, but obviously a bit more. It's a small country with really high wages and whatnot, compared to up and coming Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which obviously it's a much bigger pool of talent and native talent, although not as well trained, not as well senior, but maybe more stable. And maybe better funded already. So with Emirates, which generally was building their international image as a kind of a trading, a place to make business for longest time, not just for gaming. So and on top of that, you can see also Cyprus and others that are coming from a different angle. That hey, we're part of European Union and you have a lot of lot of again advantages to doing business there compared to others. So I think it's a if you look at it more holistically, there's definitely connecting the dots. I think that's the more important part. That's the most important challenge for everyone to go for, and yeah, this is what like made me excited and try to study region a bit and more. And this is what I hope we'll get to the bottom of this through our through our journeys.
I've got a good, an interesting question for you. It's kind of hypothetical, but if you were starting out your career now in gaming, let's say 10 years ago, where would you move to in the world now to have the most opportunity to kind of make the most impact for yourself in gaming?
Wow, that's a very good one. I think if you look just straight up, okay, where can you do the most impact? Where can you learn the most? Like generally, I think it's the companies which and regions where are on a growth trajectory, right? So I think if you start working in a whatever bigger company which is not really growing super fast anymore, it's more or less the stable or a couple percent a year. I think it's very hard to raise fast enough or to make an impact large enough, because obviously you start from some entry level position and work your way up to something interesting takes a lot of time. I think in more dynamic circumstances, like hey, there's a where there's a lot of funding, a lot of growth, a lot of interest, I think it can be much faster. So I would definitely, when I was starting 10 years ago and I chose to move to Nordics, to Sweden and Finland, it was straight up based on this. It's this fast growing, biggest, highest concentration of game developers, probably in the world per capita at that time, and fastest growing. So that was the best place to start super scale, to learn more about business and start working with the companies. But right now, I think definitely this region deserves more attention, because you can see the dynamics. The dynamics are here. You can see as post-COVID kind of a slump and post-IDFA slump came to the Western market, and they became kind of bearish in. I think too conservative in certain aspects. So I think it's not that easy to find growth purely in West in gaming if you're looking for that kind of trajectory. Obviously here there's a lot of stuff missing, but again, if you're come to the West, can connect some of the dots which are missing and can leverage the strengths of the GCC region and its ecosystem and its vision and the resources and talent and more established ecosystems in Western world. I think this is where the magic can happen. So I don't necessarily think it's just one particular place, but I can imagine that leveraging the current momentum of GCC would be an important ingredient if you really want to make an impact. So definitely, I was similar as you. I always move somewhere where I think something was happening. So yeah, I feel the energy here, and we'll talk with quite a few people who can tell something more. How about you?
Yeah, that's a good question. 10 years ago, I moved to Barcelona before it became a kind of gaming hub that it is now. There was only really King and Social Point back then, and maybe a couple of startups. And yeah, I mean, now it's far bigger than it kind of even was then. Much more studios have moved there, either moved there or created their own studio. Now, I would say, from what I'm seeing and what I previously mentioned is, I think it would have to be Riyadh based on the opportunities that are out there, but also potentially Dubai or Abu Dhabi, depending on what is out there. I think as living wise, I'm still more excited, I would say, living in the UAE than Saudi Arabia at this moment. You mentioned earlier today that you have the sea here. That's obviously a nicer aspect than being in the kind of middle of 600 kilometers away from the seaside. And also because of it's far more international here in Dubai, even in Abu Dhabi, because it's been a big tourism hub. It's obviously like there's a lot of stuff going on. Saudi Arabia is still very much opening up, but I do feel Saudi Arabia with kind of Vision 2030 is becoming somewhere that is going to be very exciting. I think for young game developers, I definitely would recommend them looking into Riyadh because of the exciting potential of what's going on there. So I think it's difficult to choose, but probably leaning on Riyadh purely for what we've spoken about. But yeah, there's probably more opportunities all over the world, and even within the region. I think that if yet to come about. I think more of the countries within the region, Qatar, for example, we see them doing loads of things on the global stage, including hosting the World Cup recently. But what are they doing in gaming? Is there going to be a gaming? Is that going to be a gaming hub as well in Doha? We've talked about Bahrain as well. There's a lot of countries within the region that could start coming out from this, and I wouldn't be surprised. Right now, it's very much UAE and Saudi Arabia like pushing the kind of industry within the region. But I think this region will grow to be like the powerhouse of gaming by 2030, 2033, where these kind of dates they have aimed for. It's not going to happen overnight, but the next 5 or 10 years, there's going to be a big movement across, and we've seen that with the kind of money being put in, but with time, with that kind of effort being put in, and that kind of funding, and these programs from the government. I would say this is, if you're now starting out and you've got time to kind of move, best place is to come out here and see how it goes in terms of your career. That's why we're here to see kind of to bring that to life, that whole kind of dream, because we think that's it's got to be the way forward. And actually, a lot of things that I see is that there's still not enough, as we've mentioned, there's not enough connection to the West, and still people are not really paying as much attention as we think they should be. So, yeah.
By the way, I want to react on that's a good question. Younger developers or people who want to get into industry, exciting place to be. I think this is absolutely one aspect that you just wanna be somewhere where things are happening. But on the other side, you also me 10, 12 years ago, I obviously knew nobody and knew nothing. I just had some kind of affinity for the gaming. So really need to start going to events, try to meet as many people as possible. And Nordics was a great region to start with. So I think you also need people, somebody who are knowledgeable to kind of try to kind of understand and suck all their knowledge they have and try to bring some value to them. But this is what I would say. It's not just about, hey, there's more, let's say, young people, young foreign people coming in to start something, which I think it's very important as well and bring a lot of experience. But you see very experienced executives from the biggest publishers in the West that moved with their whole families into Riyadh or into UAE, and ultimately, if you ask them why they do it, they tell you, oh, it's a too big opportunity to pass to pass. I have the amount of resources and focus, and also the growth potential is uncomparable what you can maybe find in Europe or in the West nowadays. So you can see ex King, ex Activision, Blizzard execs coming over and being handling a lot of basically resources and trust and to establish this over here. So I think this is also something that it's not just about young and up and coming entrepreneurs or people who want to become like a part of this early place sorta, but definitely you see a lot of experienced execs moving over here to figure stuff out. You see a lot of funds establishing their presence here, and again, it's about the connecting the dots. If you understand what are the pros and cons and strengths and weaknesses in every different parts of the world, that you have some connection and some understanding with, and you are able to do it properly, I think there's a massive value to be unlocked. And again, I don't think it happens in a vacuum. It's a global digital business. You need there's this region has something which and the momentum and capital, which currently it's a bit lacking in the West, but also has quite a few drawbacks so far as an immature ecosystem and a lot of the talent missing, a ready talent that is able to compete on the global stage missing. So I think it requires quite a few quite a few dot connecting, but yeah, it's I think it's interesting for many different profiles to do so.
Yeah, if you're an experienced exec, you'll come to the region. Makes a lot of sense, like money-wise, of course, but also like it's a new chapter, and it's like, you know, it's an educated risk, I would say. You can always go back to your region after some years developing stuff out here. So I think a lot of them see that excitement, and we see that kind of we see themselves when we speak to those execs, that they do talk about, like, you know, this is a great opportunity, as you mentioned. So yeah, I think also for ourselves, you know, taking up opportunities here, and then for people like us of our experience, it's a prime ground to kind of, you know, build something new, and really show the rest of the world what the kind of what this region is capable of.
So with that remarks, what do you think is next for the Sandpit and the GamePod?
I think our Sandpit sessions must continue. Like, we must now interview more people, see what they think, execs in the region and people who are investing in the region. And I think we must now try and take GamePod, you know, global as well. So go to more of these kind of events and do sessions where we just talk about how we see gaming, where it's going, and what kind of, you know, whatever regions are kind of
up and coming,
yeah,
and what need to be. Everyone needs to pay attention if
as long as someone listens to us, we'll be there.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, absolutely. I think we have a quite exciting lineup. I think we've tested it, this concept. We contacted some people, went to the event and whatnot. So I think everyone is excited. Everyone agreed that there's very information to be shared as of now. So basically, we try to get you the most interesting, you know, guests, and to tell their story and their connection with the region, and what they figured out or had to figure out, and what they think was coming. And I hope that together, also with our journey to kind of establishing ourselves and connecting the dots in the region, will be beneficial for the wider industry. Because yeah, like I it was struggle for me, and I guess everyone agreed it was struggle for everyone to get something going on besides, you know, reading a bunch of headlines. So yeah, if we manage to introduce the critical mass of people from the region or from the other parts of the world that are trying to do something, I think magic can happen. So yeah, let's do it.
I hope you guys enjoyed our first game pod from the Sandpit Sessions, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and yeah, as Farhan said, we're now in Dubai during the BGC Gaming Expo, and yeah, we want to continue this format as long as it makes sense.